Tonight, the urgent search for 5 people on a missing submersible headed for the Titanic.
We are deploying all available assets.
The vessel that vanished off Newfoundland.
Heart-wrenching, knowing that this is going on off the coast here.
For an underwater expedition to the wreckage site. Police begin interviews with injured survivors of the Manitoba bus crash.
All the witnesses were in the bus, and a lot of them are in trauma right now.
The agonizing pace of a painstaking investigation. Plus, Canadian weather, a study in contrasts.
What is a little bit unusual about this event is just how potent it is.
From a surprising snowfall to searing heat, fueling the wildfires.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. Canadian and American Coast Guard crews are desperately trying to establish contact tonight with 5 modern-day adventurers who are on a journey to see the wreckage of the Titanic up close. The lost submersible they are on only has 96 hours of oxygen. That's 4 days, and the clock started ticking as of yesterday at 6 a.m. The search happening roughly 700 kilometers off the coast of Newfoundland in waters more than 3 kilometers deep. CTV's John Vanavelli-Rao starts us off on the urgent undersea rescue mission.
This is not a thrill ride for tourists. It's much more.
In a recent video, the company behind the missing submersible touted its Titanic trips.
Excitement, thrills.
A journey to the bottom of the sea for wealthy tourists wanting to get close to the world's most famous shipwreck.
It's not a ride at Disney, There's a lot of real risk involved, and there's a lot of challenges.
And tonight, those risks laid bare for passengers who paid $250,000 to ride in this submersible after all communications were lost an hour and 45 minutes into their dive on Sunday. This 59-year-old British billionaire adventurer now among the 4 crew members and pilot who haven't been heard from since. Hamish Harding also went to space on one of Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin rockets, and on Sunday posted a photo signing his name on the Titanic mission logo.
And the longer this goes on, of course, the more at risk the people inside that submersible are.
That submersible, called Titan, left St. John's on Friday, towed behind a support ship, with tourists going on an 8-day voyage to and from the wreck site and descending 4 kilometers. The company OceanGate has been offering such tours since 2021, in a statement saying we are exploring and mobilizing all options to bring the crew back safely, adding it's trying to re-establish contact with the submersible.
This trip is not for the faint-hearted to begin with, so there's 5 of you in pretty close quarters.
Canadian Colin Taylor made the trek last year with his son and can't imagine what the missing are going through.
They're all adventurers. They had some notion of what they were getting into, but boy, I really feel for them.
Search planes from both Canada and the U.S. are now scouring the area, looking for any sign of the submersible above or below the surface. While sonar buoys are listening for unusual sounds in the water, like tapping on the hull or voices.
If we find this vessel in the water, then we will have to effect some sort of rescue.
But a rescue at the depth of the Titanic would be an enormous challenge. Larry Daly dove to the site 20 years ago.
This is, heart-wrenching, knowing that this is going on off the coast here.
A Canadian Coast Guard ship is on its way, and there's been a call out to private companies that could help with a deep-sea rescue with not much time to work with. Omar.
Tense and anxious hours ahead. All right, John, thank you. Manitoba RCMP have started a challenging part of their investigation into last week's bus crash that killed 15 people. They're trying to speak with survivors slowly recovering in hospital. CTV's Vanessa Lee is in Winnipeg tonight.
A moment of silence for the 15 lives lost, as RCMP assured heartbroken families answers will come, but say it'll take time.
It's very difficult because normally we have numerous amount of eyewitnesses. In this case, we don't. All the witnesses were in the bus, and a lot of them are in trauma right now that we can't talk to.
That includes the driver of the bus, Police say they have been able to speak to at least one survivor but would not divulge details. They have obtained dashcam video from the semi-truck they say shows the semi had the right-of-way at the time of the crash. The mechanical analysis of both vehicles will take weeks, if not months.
We have to determine accurate answers, and when I talk about accurate answers, we mean, was someone at fault here? Our job as investigators is to rule that out.
All 10 survivors are still in hospital. 5 are in critical condition. 1 patient was moved out of critical care in the past day. They range in age from their 60s to 80s.
The last few days have been incredibly emotional for all of us. This is the worst tragedy in the history of our entire province.
The province says supports are in place for anyone struggling, from first responders traumatized by the gruesome scene to grieving families, who will also be reimbursed for travel, hotel, or food costs.
If any of you have to travel for your family's situation, our message to you is that we are here to help you.
Manitoba RCMP say autopsies are now underway, adding they hope to release more about the identities of those who died in the coming days. Vanessa Lee, CTV News, Winnipeg.
A development tonight in that Canadian Forces investigation we first told you about on the weekend. Major Steve Hurlbut, a snowbirds pilot, has been charged with sexual assault by military police. It stems from an alleged incident in Barrie, Ontario last week. Hurlbut piloted the 9 jet on the 9 aircraft team. That plane has been grounded. And the RCMP is investigating a fatal shooting at a Sikh temple in Surrey, BC. Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a prominent local Sikh leader, was hit by multiple bullets while leaving the parking lot last night.
In the days leading up to this assassination, he had said repeatedly that his life is in danger.
Nijjar was part of a movement supporting Sikh independence in the Indian state of Punjab and has been accused of terrorism in that country. More than 400 wildfires are still burning across Canada tonight, half of them out of control. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Melanie Nagy on the firefight and the battle against the risks extending far beyond the flames.
Time-lapse video shows suffocating smoke from the Donny Creek wildfire filling the skies in northeastern BC.
Just unbelievable.
Professional photographer Joe Maiko spent days filming the fire, which is now the largest recorded in provincial history, along with its monstrous size. He was struck by the massive amount of smoke.
The smoke was so thick on our site, you couldn't see more than maybe 150 feet.
Smoke from Canada's severe wildfire season has been deemed a major concern by health officials. Just yesterday, Toronto's skyline was hazy as the city again struggled with poor air quality.
Wildfire smoke is made up of small particles and gases. It is the fine particles that carries the greatest risk.
Today at a federal wildfire briefing, Canada's health minister shared a sobering statistic saying between 2013 and 2018, 2,500 people died due to poor air quality linked to wildfires.
Because of what we're seeing this year, we expect, unfortunately, both the short-term and the longer-term consequences of bad air quality due to wildfires to be even larger.
To help hard-hit regions, Ottawa is supplying air quality monitors for places like hospitals. Dozens have already been sent to Nova Scotia and Quebec. Back in BC, there's good news for people on Vancouver Island. With the Cameron Lake fire under control, the province has confirmed a highway that's been closed for weeks is on track to open to single-lane traffic in the coming days, a relief for cut-off communities like Port Alberni.
There's less visitors, so there's less money being spent, and so everybody's feeling the pressure and the strain.
As for the Donny Creek wildfire, with it so big and so fierce, officials say crews will likely be fighting it well into the fall. Melanie Nagy, CTV News, Vancouver.
The scorching heat this spring is only one worry. A deluge of rain and even snow, another. Alberta Bureau Chief Bill Fortier on the weather whiplash.
Edson, where residents just returned days ago from a wildfire evacuation, is now facing the threat of a different disaster.
The water is now our issue over fire.
The town declaring a local state of emergency after nature dropped nearly 10 centimeters of rain, causing some localized flooding. And with more in the forecast, the embattled community is bracing.
We have every available resource in our community on the flooding situation.
The relentless assaults from nature taking an emotional toll on the town.
This has been incredibly difficult the last number of weeks for us.
Much of the province has gone from tinder dry conditions to several days of rain. A high stream flow advisory is in effect for many areas, including Edmonton.
We don't recommend you be active in those rivers. Stay well away from them.
The region has seen more rain during the last week than it normally sees during the entire month of June.
What is a little bit unusual about this event is just how potent it is, just how much precipitation is falling.
Further west, more precipitation and lower than average temperatures have created scenes like this in the Kelowna area. Jasper National Park has also seen several centimeters of snow in campgrounds in town and more at the ski hill Marmot Basin.
I've never seen it, never in June, and I've been here in Jasper at Marmot Basin actually for the last 45 years.
Almost enough to think about skiing just days before the official start to summer.
It's tempting to reopen, but that's something we wouldn't consider.
Here in Edmonton, the river is expected to crest Wednesday. There's some potential risk to docks and boat launches, but river forecasters say the North Saskatchewan is not expected to overflow its banks. Omar.
Unbelievable images. All right, Bill, thank you. A blistering heat wave in India is believed to have claimed the lives of at least 170 people in the last few days. Temperatures have pushed past 42 degrees. Power is out and hospitals are overwhelmed. The morgue at this hospital in the most populous state is at capacity after 54 people died over the weekend. And millions in the southern U.S. are under heat warnings tonight after a deadly few days. There were at least 20 tornadoes this weekend and another 6 today. CTV's Joy Malbin on the damage and the destruction.
Multiple tornadoes ripped through Mississippi overnight, turning deadly in the small rural town of Lewin. Homes torn apart, trees snapped in half, animals left with no shelter. Nearly 24 people were injured and at least one woman was killed.
I mean, it was unreal, the force of the wind. It was scary.
These summer storms are terrifying. This time-lapse footage shows a funnel cloud moving through the town of Beaver, Oklahoma.
It was like rumbling. You could hear stuff cracking, breaking.
One man was killed when a tree fell on his home. Just 70 kilometers from there, Perryton, Texas, is still picking up the pieces and mourning the loss of 3 people after a tornado leveled 200 homes and businesses.
It's hard. It's really hard. All the loss, all the people that lost their lives.
In Florida, stormy weather flipped over a houseboat.
Hey, go back in!
4 people had to be rescued near Panama City.
Yeah, you see.
And a wave of twisters now hitting Florida. Forecasters say this deadly storm system is being fueled by hazardous heat. Texas is baking. Across Louisiana, New Mexico, and Mississippi, temperatures are in the triple digits. The storms have left hundreds of thousands without power, millions now in the grip of a heat wave.
It's like 94 inside, and you couldn't open the windows because it's probably hotter out there.
Today, President Joe Biden announced millions of dollars to tackle the climate crisis, calling it an existential threat. As forecasters predict the first named hurricane of the season, Brett, is now forming in the warm Atlantic waters. Omar?
All right, Joy, thanks. Joe Biden also said today relations between the U.S. and China are, quote, on the right trail, following a high-profile diplomatic trip to Beijing by the U.S. Secretary of State. Antony Blinken met with Chinese President Xi Jinping today. No major breakthroughs, but both sides believe there was progress in stabilizing ties. The relationship has been strained over trade, Taiwan, and the Chinese surveillance balloon over U.S. airspace in February.
I stress that direct engagement and sustained communication at senior levels is the best way to responsibly manage our differences and ensure that competition does not veer into conflict.
But both nations could not reach an agreement over better communication between their 2 militaries. And a communication breakdown of sorts in Ottawa today on whether the RCMP was investigating the Prime Minister. Turns out they're not, and the file on SNC-Lavalin is closed. CTV's Kevin Gallagher has been following the story throughout the day. Kevin, what's the latest?
Omar, tonight the RCMP says there is no investigation into obstruction of justice allegations, even though earlier today the nonprofit group Democracy Watch published the RCMP's response to its request for information into the SNC-Lavalin prosecution situation. The Mounties replied, "This matter is currently under investigation." That led to posts on social media and to a question in the House of Commons asking if the Prime Minister is under criminal investigation. In a statement tonight, the RCMP says there was insufficient evidence to substantiate a criminal offense and the file was concluded. 4 years ago, that situation was a major scandal for the government. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was even found in violation of the Ethics Act for improperly pressuring former Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould to intervene in the fraud and corruption prosecution of the Montreal-based engineering firm. The RCMP did not explain the contradictory statements, but said it wrapped up the investigation in January this year. Omar?
All right, Kevin, thank you for the update. Time for a break, but when we come back, sounding the alarm about a summer crisis in emergency care, plus poolside for an Olympic act of kindness. The latest prognosis of Canada's crippling healthcare crisis paints a dire picture tonight. CTV's Annie Bergeron all over with the urgent new warning.
Wait times at emergency rooms across Canada range from an hour to more than 6 hours tonight. But a new report warns patients will likely have to wait far longer this summer.
All systems need to think and respond to this as the crisis that it is. And what we've seen to date is people hoping for the best, that it's going to work out, and that is not working.
A report by the Canadian Medical Association Journal says the capacity of emergency departments to provide care has been outstripped, and that June to August will be precarious and exhausting months for emergency care providers. The stark picture, a concern for Kathy Arbour. Her local emergency department in Minden, Ontario, closed down this month. And yesterday, when she could have used help following a reaction to a new medication, she took a risk and stayed home.
Because it was going to be that extra trip, because it was it was going to be unfamiliar to me, to whoever I was going to see, and I was worried about the wait times.
Wait times, experts say, are made worse by a lack of beds, a shortage of family doctors, and a lack of staff.
I didn't go when I should have. I know better. But I think that's going to happen to a lot of people.
Last summer, the staffing shortages at the Perth Hospital, 1 hour outside of Ottawa, were so bad, its emergency room closed for 3 weeks.
We've been able, through the use of agency nurses, to shore up our department, but it's an ongoing concern.
The CMAJ report acknowledges recent efforts by various governments to increase the recruitment of internationally trained healthcare workers and the introduction of peer support programs to help healthcare workers in provinces including British Columbia and Ontario. But the report says even those efforts aren't enough. Annie Bergeron Oliver, CTV News, Ottawa.
A prominent American judge who sentenced disgraced U.S. gymnastics Dr. Larry Nassar for molesting hundreds of girls is demanding a national inquiry into sports across Canada.
When will Canada hear its children and take this meaningful action to protect them from the pain, suffering, and trauma? It is the murdering of the soul of the athlete who pays the price for the rest of their lives while everyone else profits.
Rosemary Aquilina testified before the Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage. Canada has been rocked by scandals across many sports, with physical and emotional abuse endured by athletes from coaches. A beautiful display of fair play in the pool at the Special Olympics World Summer Games. A Saudi Arabian swimmer, bottom of your screen, mistakenly thought she finished the race after 50 meters, but there was still half the journey to go. In true sporting spirit, the Puerto Rican swimmer, after completing her race, went back to help her fellow athlete finish hers, just so she wouldn't be alone. A heartwarming display of sportsmanship that deserves a gold medal. Coming up, an attack in the middle of a concert. A pop star struck on stage by a cell phone. Canada's mission in Afghanistan is being memorialized with a new national monument designed by Indigenous artist and veteran Adrian Stimson.
The form of the monument is based on the tenets of the medicine wheel. Medicine wheels are places where an individual or group goes to focus their energies.
The names of the fallen will be inscribed on its walls, and it will sit right across from the Canadian War Museum in Ottawa. Pop star Bibi Rexha suffered an eye injury after a scary incident at her concert. She was performing last night in New York when someone threw a cell phone that hit her in the head. She had to be rushed off stage.
I'm good.
The singer posted video of her injury online. A man was reportedly arrested and charged with assault. After the break.
How terrible it must have been for Granny to leave her home.
Finding ways to teach kids about Canada's troubled past. When your ancestry includes unspeakable hardship, sharing those stories with your kids can be difficult. In tonight's Indigenous Circle, CTV's Donna Sound speaks to a children's author and illustrator who are teaching young readers about the horrors of history.
We don't use names here. All students are known by numbers. You are 759.
This 7-year-old is learning about a hard and difficult topic to teach someone so young, residential schools. But it's part of Canada's troubled history, and Jenny K. Dupuis wants it taught in schools all across the country. Her first book was the award-winning I Am Not a Number.
Picture books can be used as cultural documentation. Kids at a very young age can in fact learn about, histories that can be very, very difficult.
Dupuis is from Nipissing First Nation in Ontario, and it tells her family's story.
When you're a kid and you're flipping through textbooks and you're only seeing cartoon images of people that are Indigenous and not the full true histories being shared in its entirety, it really rips at your self-esteem.
She has now come out with a new children's book, Heartberry Bling.
How terrible it must have been for Granny to leave her home.
It also teaches hard truths.
I never actually learned how to write for children.
This one is about discrimination against Indigenous women who lost their First Nation status through marriage, something that didn't happen to men. It's also about patience and perseverance, told through beating. Eva Campbell is Heartberry Bling's illustrator. She's also a teacher.
As soon as I got a copy of the book, I took a copy to the younger grades teachers, and they have been interested in using them in their class.
Why are we treated so cruelly?
True history that can't be hidden, even from children. Donna Sound, CTV News, Toronto.
And that's a snapshot of this Monday for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night, and see you tomorrow.